Okay, so the first thing I want to just talk about, just make sure you've got a good setup here, a large red container of warm water, and your toolbox is clean. Pin tool, rib tool, trim tool, round wooden angle tool, sometimes I call it, and a clean sponge. So the sponge I put right in my water. And then these I'm gonna need eventually. So I've got my wheel bins set up, I'm plugged in, I know I'm in the off position. So I'm gonna turn my wheel on, make sure it's going counterclockwise, and it is. So now I'm gonna make sure it's in the off position, and I'm going to make sure I wedge my clay into a ball. I want a nice start, so I want to make sure that it looks like a ball and not an awkward chunk of clay. And I could work out stuff like this just with my fingers and mold it out. With the metal here, I don't have a bat on this. I can see the rings. I want to make sure that this metal bat is dry and that my piece doesn't have water just put on this just yet. What I need to do is attach it to the wheel head. I do this little back and forth motion, or kind of round in a circle, so that it looks almost like a top on the bottom. This helps it to avoid it creating a void with an air pocket underneath. Now I need to slam it as best I could in the center. And I sometimes push it down. I tell my students who are first learning, they can push down all along the edges, and that's fine. So now I've got it as best I could in the center, but it's not centered. And I'm not even sure it's all that well attached. So now I'm gonna get my speed set. First thing I wanna do is set my speed, not all the way, but it needs to be pretty fast. So the speed I'm going, this would be all the way, too fast. It's just too fast for what we need to do. So I'm gonna back off and show you the speed approximately. Okay. So I'm going fast. I take my foot off the pedal so that I don't accidentally hit it or turn it off while I'm doing this. First thing I want to do, I wet my hands and I wet the piece with water. During this demonstration, I am going to frequently get water and put it on. You don't want friction to build up. You need the water to come in through it. It needs to be somewhat easy to open. So the first thing I do is I give it a little push to make sure that it's attached to the wheel correctly. So I'm pushing down, that's just securing it, because the next step I do is going to be quite forceful. It's called coning up. So I'm going to cone up, add again more water, and using my palms, I'm going to give it a hug. Obviously my fingers are there, so I'm giving it a hug. And I'm coning up. They call it coning up because it looks just like a cone as it goes up. So I'm going to make sure I get this all up. And now I need to cone down. I'm gonna add a little water because it is feeling dry. And using my palms, I'm gonna push back down on the piece. And as I go back down, it takes on a dome shape. So here's my dome shape. I have a little irregularities, but that should work itself out in the centering process. But I'm gonna cone up one more time. I'm gonna, every once in a while, I'm gonna also clean the wheel head so that I can see where my piece begins and ends. That's important in the throwing process. So I'm going to give it a hug and cone up. And then I'm going to use my palms again and cone down. You can do this several times, and sometimes students find it if their piece gets all strange looking or all wonky looking, that coning up and coning back down straightens out and they can bring it back to a dome again. So I'm adding more water. Now I'm ready to center. My piece does look like a dome, but when I put my hand on it, my hand has a bounce to it, and it should not. So part of the centering process is to eliminate that bounce. And there's a couple of ways you can do this. The way I teach is that I want you to look at this like a clock. At 7 o'clock, which is right here for me, I want to put my palm and I want to start pushing pressure, but I don't want it to just shoot up. So my right hand has to do something. So what my right hand is going to do, kind of a karate chop motion, keeping it down and actually kind of making it look like a more of a flatter top dome. It's going to be easier for me to open this way. I'm just going to hold steady. My elbows are down on my legs, and my hand is holding steady. I'm not just, you know, smoothing out the clay. You know, you don't want to massage it. You have to hold steady. That takes practice. So once again, my palm is at 7 o'clock. I don't want to squeeze it with my fingers. If I do that, I'll create permanent indentations that would cause me to have to cone up and cone down again. So my palm is holding steady, and now my dome is turning into my hand smoothly. So I want to make sure that the top is held down by my right hand and my left hand's pushing in so that I can just gently let go. Now I just, again, want to clean up. Okay, so now I can see where my clay begins and ends. Now I'm ready to open the dome. I've actually, in coning up and coning down, I've created like a bullseye for myself, a center to see. So with my vision, with my vantage point here, I can see where my thumbs need to go in. Again, making sure that I'm pulled up all the way to the wheel. My elbows are resting on my thighs. I'm going to use my thumbs to create, at first, a small indentation. And then I'm going to back off. And then I'm going to ask myself, does that indentation look like it's dancing? If not, I know I got the center. If it looks like it's dancing, I need to go back and create the dome again. But it's not dancing, so I'm ready to go through with the opening. So now I'm opening the dome. I'm pushing in, and this does take some doing. It took a little water because the friction will cause it to resist. So I push my thumbs through, and I'm going to stop when I think I've got about a ½ an inch away from the wheel head. That takes practice too. So I put my thumbs in, and then I push my thumbs towards my palms so that now I can see the floor. The next thing I need to do is I just want to take my sponge and straighten out the rim. I want to go in now and compress the base because now I can see the base. I've created one. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to compress the base. And it's also, if you can notice that, it's also widening the opening a little bit. What this is doing is a couple of things. One, it's making a nice even floor or base so that now I can see floor and wall. The other thing it's doing, it's pushing the platelets together of the clay so that when it does dry, it won't form an S-shaped crack underneath. So I'm going to stop the wheel for just a moment. So how do I know how thick the base is? Well, I can take my pin tool, put it right in the center, and then bring my finger right to the clay. And so that's the thickness. I don't want to go any thinner than that. And all I have to do now is get rid of that little pinhole. Now I want to slow down the wheel anyway, so this is a good chance to restart the wheel, only with a slower pace, with a slower rotation. Sometimes students, if they set this too fast and they start raising the sides, they find that the piece gets away from them because the faster the wheel is going, the faster you have to pull up on the sides. I'm just compressing the rim a little bit. I'm going to once again look at this piece as if it's a clock, and at 3 o'clock, the way it's counter rotation is going to be the best area for me to pull up. So I'm going to add some water so there's no friction, and my hands have to mirror each other. My left hand is going on the inside, my right hand is going on the out, and I'm going to put some pressure on the clay. So I'm actually grabbing the clay and I'm slowly going up. Because my wheel's going slow, I need to go slow. So I'm going to slowly go up. And I'm bringing the clay with me. Now when I get to the point where I'm at the rim, I brought it up to the rim, I'm going to very gently let go so that my rim doesn't become a very skinny opening. So I let go, and now I'm going to go ahead. I've caused some interior marks with even as short as my nails are. They're there. So I'm just putting a little pressure on the inside, get rid of that, and I'm going to compress the rim. Because every time I pull, I want to compress the rim. Now I can feel, I've got a couple of more pulls here. I've got a cylinder that has a wide base. If you were able to see inside of here, it would be actually still cone shaped. So I'm going back down, I'm grabbing more clay, and with a steady pace upward, just straight up, I want to create a straight cylinder. Again, when I get to the top, I just want to be careful. Back off on the pressure. And compress the rim. I'm going to add some more water. I'm going to do one more pull on this. Compress the rim. I'm going to go inside and make sure I get rid of any water that's kind of lingering in there. If you leave water in the center, it'll disintegrate the center and it'll eat away at your base. You don't want to have that happen. So now I've got some tools that I could use. I've got my cylinder here, but I want to learn how to trim it. So here's how you trim to get rid of the excess, so that when you do put it back to trim upside down, you're dealing with less clay. I have my trim tool, my wooden angle tool, and the blunt end of it. The first time I use the trim tool, I use the blunt end to get the bulk of it off. And we want to learn how to taper our pieces. That's when we use the angle end. I'm going to go in and actually take it off the extra that fans out. And I'm going to go ahead and angle it inward. And you can see all the extra clay coming off. These are good for recycling. And then that's it. I could also, what they call compressing the sides, I can go ahead and straighten out the sides. Okay, we'll stop there.